hello, Barry. It's Cliff Richard here. He said, Cliff, g'day, mate. And he said, oh, I'm so glad you called. He said, the band and I have been such fans of yours. I went, and then I thought to myself, I bet. Anyway.
He's outlived his brothers. He's outlived the era that made him immortal. And now, at 79, Barry Gibb, the last surviving Bee Gee, is finally telling the truth about a man who quietly shaped his journey, Cliff Richard. You see, when people talk about the Bee Gees, they talk about disco. They talk about Saturday Night Fever, about the falsetto, the glitter, the unstoppable rhythm of the 70s. But the real story, the one Barry's carried for decades, began long before the lights, the awards, the madness. It began with a quiet boy from the Isle of Man, and a moral compass borrowed from a man named Cliff. Barry Gibb was born into a house where music wasn't a dream, it was survival. The Gibbs weren't rich, they weren't privileged. They were just a family that believed songs could lift you out of whatever life threw at you. His parents, Hugh and Barbara, turned that belief into something sacred. Every melody, every harmony, every night around the piano meant something. And that spark, that stubborn belief in music's power, took Barry from small halls in Manchester to the hot streets of Queensland, Australia. It was there, under that blinding Australian sun, that three brothers, Barry, Maurice, and Robin, found their sound. The world knows the name now, the Bee Gees. But back then, they were just kids trying to be heard. And while Barry led the charge with his songwriting and that aching voice, he was watching. Always watching. Watching how fame could turn good men reckless. Watching how music could lift you and how it could destroy you just as fast. That's when Cliff Richard came into view. Before the Bee Gees ever conquered the world, Cliff had already done it. He was Britain's first true rock star, clean-cut, confident, unapologetically decent in an age when everyone else was chasing rebellion. And to a young Barry, that mattered. Years later, Barry would finally admit it. Cliff was one of the first artists who made me believe you could be decent and famous at the same time. Think about that. In the 60s, the wildest decade in modern music, Barry didn't look up to the loudest. He looked up to the kindest. While others bragged about their chaos, Cliff quietly stood firm. He had faith, discipline. He treated fame like a borrowed suit, to be worn with grace, not arrogance. Barry never forgot that. As the Bee Gees began their rise, from Massachusetts to Love Somebody, and then the unstoppable tidal wave of Saturday Night Fever, Barry found himself in a world Cliff had already survived. A world of flashing lights, false friends, and endless temptation. He saw what fame did to artists, the loneliness it carved into their souls, the brothers it tore apart. He watched it happen to Andy, then to Maurice, then to Robin. And yet, through it all, Cliff stayed steady, a reminder that maybe you didn't have to lose yourself to win. In his later interviews, Barry's voice softens when he talks about Cliff. You can hear the respect buried in every word. He never lost his faith, Barry said once, even when the business tried to break him. I respected that. And that's when you realize this isn't just admiration. It's longing. It's the quiet confession of a man who saw both sides of fame, the glory and the grave. Because Barry's life, for all its success, has been marked by loss. He's written 16 #1 hits in the United States. He's been knighted by the Queen. He's sold over 220 million records. And yet, when he talks, it's not about the numbers. It's about the brothers who aren't here anymore. Andy, gone at 30. Maurice, gone at 53. Robin, gone at 62. They weren't just brothers. They were Barry's heartbeat, And when that beat fell silent, he had to carry it alone. Now, in his twilight years, when Barry looks at someone like Cliff Richard, still singing, still smiling, still standing tall, he doesn't see a rival. He sees a survivor. "We've both seen friends go too soon," Barry said quietly. "When you've been in this business as long as we have, you realize that just surviving it is a miracle. And isn't that the truth? These two men, so different in style, share something rare. They endured. They lived through the chaos, through the shifts of culture, through the decades that chewed up and spat out countless stars. They stood the test of time, not by chasing trends, but by staying true to who they were. Cliff with his faith, Barry with his family. It's easy to forget how brutal the 70s were to fame. The drugs, the egos, the pressure to reinvent yourself every 6 months. But while many burned out, Barry and Cliff built something quieter: longevity. They understood what most stars never do: that being a legend isn't about how loud you shine, it's about how long you last. Barry has often said that when he performs, he still feels his brothers around him. He still feels the harmonies filling the space beside him, even when no one's there. And in that same way, Cliff represents something similar: the idea that belief in God, in family, in music can outlast everything else. When Barry says Cliff is a man who never let the stage change the soul, he's really talking about himself too, or the man he wishes he'd been all along. Because deep down, Barry's truth isn't just about Cliff. It's about what Cliff represents: stability, integrity, and faith in an industry that rewards none of those things. He says, people always want drama, but the truth is simpler. Cliff's a good man, one of the best. He never gave up, and he never gave in. And that line right there, that's Barry's final statement. After a lifetime of noise, he's choosing peace. After losing everyone he ever made music with, he's choosing gratitude. The truth about Cliff Richard, as Barry Gibb tells it, isn't scandalous or shocking. It's something purer, a rare kind of respect between two men who never stopped believing in melody, in decency, in something real. It's almost poetic that Barry's last great story isn't about fame. It's about faith. Faith in others, faith in music, faith that what you build with honesty lasts longer than any chart position. Today, Barry lives quietly with his wife Linda, the same woman who stood by him for over 50 years. She's seen him at his highest and lowest. She's seen him broken by grief and lifted by song. And when he talks about Cliff, it's with the kind of warmth that only another survivor would understand. They both came from an era when music came from the heart, not the machine. When lyrics meant something, when melody could heal. And in a world that's forgotten that, Barry's words feel like a prayer, not just for Cliff, but for everything their generation built. You can feel the nostalgia, can't you? That ache for the time when songs had soul, when artists believed in something greater than fame. That's why people like Barry and Cliff still matter. Because in their story, we're reminded of something we've all lost. From one man who's seen it all, to another who never let the world change him. And maybe that's the real secret behind both their legacies. Not the music, not the money, not even the fame. Just the simple, stubborn act of staying good. Because in the end, after all the applause fades, goodness is the only song worth remembering.